Well, everyone, it's another happy day. We get to talk about another gaming console, and this time around, it is the PlayStation Vita. So this specific console came out a couple of years ago, actually 10 years ago for some places. In North America, it's technically, I guess, 9 years ago, but regardless, this is one of those consoles that I think was essentially the end of the whole entire PlayStation portable, I guess, genre in a way. At this point, and I think, mobile gaming really took a toll here, but also at the same time, mostly because, mobile games, we already had the capability of playing, really good video games from our phones and our iPods at that time, even our laptops, that it didn't make too much sense to have another portable gaming console that was less powerful than our, heavier intensive gaming consoles like our PlayStation 3s and PlayStation 4s in a couple of years for this specific console. Now, this specific console is regarded as a commercial failure, and you can tell I read that straight from Wikipedia. And it was mostly because it didn't sell that well. The 3DS was more successful, and even the 3DS wasn't like a crazy great success, and for some people compared to the DS and all those other ones. But I still think the PS Vita was a very good console overall. I think it had a lot of capability. It definitely was not perfect, but I think, for a lot of reasons, it was a very good console. The funny thing is that because, and it's always with these consoles that nobody buys, they just end up going up so high in the resale value that the PlayStation Vitas are still extremely hard to get in some places for a decent amount of money. In some places, you can buy like a PlayStation 4 for cheaper than a PlayStation Vita, which is pretty insane because not that many people bought the PS Vita, so the demand is higher than supply. Now, looking around this specific console, I think this console looks very, very good. It was one of my favorite looking PSPs. I think the PSP Go was probably my favorite looking one, to be honest, but the PlayStation Vita still looks extremely current. So you have that massive 5-inch panel on the front, and there were two different models. There was like an IPS model, there was an OLED model. For this specific model I think I have the OLED model. It looks very, very good. And that was something that was really awesome. Having that type of OLED display on a console like this was pretty rare. I can't think of another console that was portable that had this type of display on it, which I'm really happy to hear. Now, it was multi-touch, and this was the first, touchscreen PSP at that time, which is really cool. You had two joysticks, so you had the joystick on the left and on the right, and it's very reminiscent of the Nintendo Switch, as most of you know. And it's funny because with the Nintendo Switch, I would have assumed that, mobile games are taking over, nobody wants a portable console, but the Nintendo Switch with its hybrid portable and non-portable, feature set, that's something that's really crazy because you wouldn't expect, portable consoles to still be crazy when our, phones can pretty much do what our consoles can do. But I'll save that for a little bit of a different video. You have the D-pad, you have the triangle X buttons and all that stuff, start select, PlayStation button, all that good stuff on the front. On the back, you do have a camera, which I think is pretty cool, but you also have this back touch, type of, texture to it. So for some games, you can actually go ahead and utilize your specific game set. If your game supports it, you can actually move and interact with the whole entire game that you're on just by sliding around with the back, and that was something that was pretty impressive at that time. The PlayStation 4 controller also has something like this. It hasn't really taken off too well since then. I mean, not too many people use it, but I still think it's a really cool feature, and I'm glad Sony put it in here. And then you have the charging port, you do your SD card kind of thing on the side and all that good stuff. And for the most part, that's really it. You have the PlayStation Vita cartridge, you can put games up top. But other than that, that was it. Very, very similar to something like a PSP Go mixed with like a PSP 3000 in a way. I mean, it looks very good. No sliding mechanism. It's more like a PSP 3000 and a Nintendo Switch had a baby. It's kind of like this in my opinion. It still feels extremely good in the hand. It never felt cheap. I feel like this thing feels a little bit more premium than even like a Nintendo Switch, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think the Nintendo Switch feels that great in the hands. The PS Vita feels a little bit more premium in my opinion. It looks very good, but it just didn't sell that well. And I think a majority of that reason, one, has to be marketing, but also I think the games that this thing came out for, it didn't really have that crazy of a, game selection in my opinion. Because not that many people bought the PlayStation Vita, this pretty much meant that not that many people are going to develop games for this thing. On top of that, another big thing was that the Nintendo 3DS that also came out, that thing had backwards compatibility for pretty much all DS games. So not only could you play the predecessor's DSi games, but you could also play that predecessor's games as well. And that was a massive thing to keep in mind. When you have a console like a PlayStation Vita that doesn't support backwards compatibility, you're pretty much already limiting the amount of people that would possibly want to buy that console. It's no longer should I buy this or this, where it's should I buy a PSP 3000 or a PS Vita, I would just buy the PS Vita. I can already play the PSP 3000 games. It's this and this. So do I have to buy a PSP 3000 and a PlayStation Vita? Less people want to buy both. More people just want to buy one. Case in point, 3DS. That thing had backwards compatibility. Even though the 3DS wasn't like the craziest, best successful console in the world, it still outsold and was overall more successful and had a longer lifespan than the PlayStation Vita, even when you factor in the 2DS XL. So that's kind of like another minor thing to keep in mind. But beyond that, one of my favorite things and also one of my least favorite things about this console is actually the UI. I liked it because it was kind of like based off Android in a way. It looked very good. But my least favorite thing about it was just how childish it looked in some cases. It just didn't look that great. I feel like it'll try to be something like I'm not really too sure what they were going for, to be honest. It just didn't look that great to me. I liked it in some cases, but for the most part, I just knew it wouldn't last as long. And I liked the PlayStation P's, standard UI. That thing looked very, very cool. Unfortunately, the PlayStation Vita's UI didn't look that crazy. So again, another minor thing to keep in mind. Another pretty big feature about the PlayStation Vita though was the remote play, which essentially is kind of ported over to our iPhones and Androids now, because we can play our PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games on our Android or iOS device. But at that time, that was pretty much an exclusive feature for the PlayStation Vita. You could stream your games from your PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation Vita, and I think that's a pretty cool thing in and of itself. And again, that's a really awesome thing for sure. Now, on top of that, I will read this from, Wikipedia's article at the very bottom. They said, while the system managed to stay afloat as a minor success, other issues continue to persist, including the high price of the system compared to the competitor, which was the 3DS. And that's completely true. Not that many people want to buy a more expensive console when the other console has more of a game selection. So that's another pretty big thing. But also, it was more expensive than a PlayStation 3 at that time, which is pretty impressive because the PlayStation 3 was a, pretty big console, obviously still current in 2011. But on top of that, the price of the memory cards and the games and the data storage. But on top of that, the memory cards for this device were also extremely expensive as well. Now, they also note something that I already mentioned in the beginning of this article was the popularity of our smartphones. We had our Androids and we had our iPhones. We already had, the capability of a PlayStation Vita in our pockets. A majority of people already played, PSP games through ROMs and emulators on their phones. Even though they weren't as powerful at that time, it just still was a better process because it was a cheaper option and it was free. So that's another thing. And on top of that, you technically had all the game selection that you want from a PSP 3000 or a PSP Go, but specifically the PSP 3000. So there weren't that many people who wanted to buy that console over a PS Vita because you couldn't play PSP 3000 UMDs from that. You could always download them and stuff, but it wasn't quite the same. So that's another pretty big thing. Essentially, PlayStation has phased out the PS Vita, and really nobody uses the PS Vita anymore. I'm sure there's still some people who play some games on it, but for the most part, it's pretty much known as one of the bigger failures for Sony, But I think with the success of the PlayStation 4 and everything, I think they did a pretty good job at marketing and moving away from this portable console. But I would have loved to seen another type of portable console from Sony. I think they would really kill it if they did it. I am surprised Microsoft also hasn't done one yet, but I guess we'll see what happens. But I was really happy about it. I think overall it's a pretty good experience, but I guess we'll see what happens in the future. If you guys have any other questions or if you have anything to add, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys can hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my other channels. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.